second half. Okay. See, we have, let's begin the news analysis quickly. So the first news article is about the introduction of a bill which aims to bring in political morality. So you have a law which wants to teach morals in the context of decriminalization of politics. What is it about? The bill aims to penalize politicians accused of severe criminal charges, and of course this is a very contentious issue, and the bill has been referred to a joint committee where both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha members will sit together and decide. Maybe we will have an update on this in the winter session. So there's no point discussing all this right now, at least for the next year's exam, until there is an element of clarity on what will happen on this. So okay, the fact is the ECI is a commission in crisis. There is nothing new in this editorial that you don't know or something that we did not discuss prior to this. So I'll just summarize the set of events. What happened? We are talking about the special intensive revision SIR provision that is brought forth by the Election Commission to weed out illegal voters in Bihar. This is the context. Is there something new here? Something that you're not aware of? No. We have discussed this multiple times. Why is the Election Commission doing this? This is the question. So the answer given by Election Commission is to conduct a fair election so that illegal voters are weeded out and the spirit of democracy is protected. This is the intent. What is actually happening? Almost 65 lakh voters are removed from the list. What is the basis for this removal? It's not clear. Is the data released? No. Is due process of law followed? No. Should ECI be accountable? Answer is again yes. In these contradictions, is it fair to say that ECI is in crisis? Because democratic institutions should be accountable. That is the gist of this article. Same old story repeated again. And I don't want to prolong this discussion further because there is nothing much to discuss here. India's democracy is failing the migrant citizen. There is an interesting concept here. I'll tell you how to look at this issue. See, economy as well as democracy should go hand in hand. Right? Again, this is in the context of the SIR issue only. But if you take a look at the issue of migrants, you have to look at it from both political as well as economical angle. Political as well as economical angle. In politics, when you are talking about democracy, the assumption is democracy is static, it is fixed, people stay put wherever they are. Right? And it is with that assumption you are giving voter right to people. Should this be the criteria? Because why are we questioning this? The intent of democracy is not static. I mean, it's evolving over a period of time. But the principle of democracy that does not change at all is people's will, no matter where they are, should be represented. So the fundamental assumption that people do not move does not reflect the democratic ethos of this country. On the other hand, take a look at this economy. Let's say you are a worker. It would be great if I find a job in a place that I want. Let's say you are from Hyderabad. It would be great if you have a job in Hyderabad. But what if your company wants you to move to Bangalore because there is an open position there? Would you say I'm not interested? Only if you don't have, only if you have an option. But That's not how it works. Not everybody can have their residence only in cities. So they will be forced to move out of their places, right? So this is the logic of migrants in an economy. So the fundamental assumption in an economy is that people will move, and the fundamental assumption in democracy is that people will stay put wherever they are. So there is no sync between these two assumptions. Politics should reflect the socio-economic realities, not the other way around. Politics should evolve. You cannot dictate a market and an economy and the social factors just because your political structure is rigid. This rigidity is man-made and controllable by sovereign power, but this is not controlled by sovereign power. If that is the case, this will become a communist state, which is antithetical to the very conception of a mixed economy where there is liberalization, privatization, globalization, and an economy that is open enough to accommodate private players to create opportunities. Change that conception, it becomes a communist state. And state does not have the capacities to generate as many jobs as the private sector. Now, how do we match this mismatched realities? Only if you change the underlying assumption. What is this underlying assumption? Your voter ID card is linked to your residence. In the context of the Bihar politics, what happened? Lot of voters are removed from the list on the criteria that they permanently migrated. But it might be a case where they just did not report to their hometown in a long time because they are in search of one job from another. These people do not have the necessary skills. They form the labor class or the working class for a lot of industries. Let's say, for example, construction workers. Do you think they will be fixated on only one site for a very long time? Yes. But will they stay put in that city forever? No. As long as that project is happening, they will stay. They will move from Bangalore to Hyderabad to Gurgaon to Pune. Wherever there is work, they will go there. It depends on their contractor. Now, in such a kind of a crisis where the job conditions itself are bad, you are taxing them even further by disenfranchising them and saying that they are permanent migrants and they don't have any voter rights. If that is the scenario, do you think migration is factored in our democracy? If you take a look at the 2011 census, you've had internal migrants concept. See, whenever we talk of migration, major emphasis is on people who move out of this country. But what about the people who are moving in and out of states? Because even they influence electoral politics. Take a look at the situation, just go and search before 2019 election, before 2024 election. People in Hyderabad moved out of the city to go back to their constituencies and voted to their leaders. Sometimes even political parties mobilized them because they wanted to win the election. In 2019, where the ex-CM of Andhra Pradesh, he got a historic mandate. Even then, people moved out in large numbers. Even in 24, there was an outflow of people from Hyderabad, especially from the IT corridors, because people are migrants there. It's not their place of residence. So, in a time where these people are actually residing in city, and if a census happens there, or if some kind of a survey happens in Andhra Pradesh, and the people who take that survey just say that they did not report here, so we are marking them as permanently migrated. How true is it? I'll give you one more example. If you take GST collections, you will see a disproportionate, share in cities. But if you take income tax collections where our PAN cards are linked to home address, they will show that income is generated in that state. But are they spending money in that state? Now, on one hand, you're taking the money spent by migrants, but you are not taking enough care, neither the home state nor the residing state. What is the situation of these people? If this is the situation of skilled professionals, what about the unskilled migrant labor, agriculture labor? Okay. Now, apart from this, you also have a concept of gendered disenfranchisement. In Bihar, in the Mithila region or in the border region of Nepal, their features, the facial features, etc., are different from the mainland Bihar. So there is a stigma associated with the women from these regions, and even they are disenfranchised because there will be a mix and match of these facial features also. So there is racial segregation, gendered segregation, and in these so many levels there is exclusion on social front and political front. What kind of an economic empowerment will these people have? Because the state is literally withdrawing from any sort of welfare activity. If you say that you are no longer a citizen of this country, because that is the implication, right? If that is not the implication, you are saying this person cannot vote, but they can be beneficiaries through Aadhaar. What is this contradiction? Right? So, we need a new policy. See, it's not enough to have policies like one nation, one ration card, or migrant children, or the migrants' children getting free ration through ICDS or Anganwadi centers feeding these kids. That is not enough. We need to reimagine a political identity for its citizen through, we need to reimagine that entire situation through a new system where the criteria itself is questioned and the population is no longer considered to be static. It's a dynamic place where people walk in and walk out, and that fluidity should be factored in recognizing the electoral politics, the identity of the voter in that electoral politics. Okay? This is what you have to take away from this article. Nuclear laws and the role of opposition. Okay, so again this is a very static topic, but I will anyway explain. The context again, whenever we are talking about nuclear power or any power resources, the context here, let me explain, is decarbonization. When I am talking about decarbonization, we are talking about the goal of net zero. What is decarbonization? An economic model where the amount of carbon emissions that are emitted are also taken back and the net effect is zero. So that net effect is zero is the net zero, and we aim to achieve this in our economy throughout by 2070. And it is in this context, when you are looking at the power generation sector, which nearly contributes to 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions in this country, we have to decarbonize this sector. And it is in this bid we want to move away from the coal-based thermal power towards renewable and cleaner resources. So apart from renewable, you also have nuclear power. At present, we are only having 3% of total power sector share from nuclear. The objective is to increase this share from 3% to much more. But the question is, why? Okay, so when you understand the intent as to why we are increasing our nuclear power and how to increase it, what are the challenges therein, how to get over them, you will have a complete understanding of the value chain of nuclear power sector. Clear? So let me explain in that context. Why nuclear power, first of all? Anyone?
Because the other renewables are not completely dependable.
Firstly, other renewables have something called grid stability issues. They are not reliable because they can't handle something called peak load factor. Peak load. Say for example in the evening, how will solar power function? If there are clouds, how will solar power guarantee that peak demand is met in the evening? Unless and until you have a battery storage system, renewable energy is unreliable. Why? How about hydro? Hydro potential is good, but they are expensive, and again they are dependent on monsoon and the water flow. Okay, so they're also expensive to construct and manage, and they're not viable in all the places. How about wind? Same issue, maintenance issues, the infrastructure required for wind. Let's say for example, do you want a wind plant near your house? How many of you would want that? It would be good if you're imagining you're in hills, etc., but you don't want the anxiety of that blade falling on your house. Do you want that? Nobody wants it, and nobody would like the look of it. It's good from a distance, but not in your backyard. This is the case, like everybody wants a hero, but not from their own house, right? So there are practical challenges for acceptance of wind power, and we can't depend on oil because it is counterproductive. Natural gas, still greenhouse gas pollution is there. You want to depend on natural hydrogen, it is difficult to extract it. You want to depend on green hydrogen, again for that you will need renewable power, which is unreliable. So considering all these practical difficulties, nuclear power is a very good alternative. And particularly now, there is a evolution in the nuclear power technology across the world. That evolution is the innovation of small modular reactors. What do you mean by small modular reactors? They are like the miniature version of a huge nuclear power plant. And despite the controversies around SMR and nuclear power, they are still considered to be safe because they have a very long shelf life. They can generate power continuously for a very long period, and that too sustainably, while they meet the peak load. Do you know where is the first application for this? In data centers. Across Europe and US, they are now considering small modular reactors and attaching them to the data centers, because data centers require electricity to the tune of the amount of electricity required for a single state. A data center in California requires as much power as entire California needs in a single day, because that is the processing speed of AI, and that is the processing need of AI. Just in a different context, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, in one of his candid interviews, was mentioning people tend to type down "thank you," "please." It costs to be polite. We always think a lot of elders tell us that you have to be nice, you have to be polite, you don't have to be rude, it doesn't cost anything to be polite. If you are being polite to ChatGPT, it will cost more in terms of power and processing speed. Extra words entered in your prompt will cost more and processing speed. So this is a generation which is getting trained to be blunt in your face, where empathy would cost them. Okay, anyway, coming back to the topic. So this is the context of a small modular reactor, and India wants to develop nuclear power, semiconductor industry, AI data centers, hydrogen power, which requires green power, and other surrounding technologies, like say for example e-vehicles. Any sustainable technology, all of them are contingent on sustainable power supply. When I say sustainable, it is not just environmentally but also economically. At this point, even if RE, that is the renewable energy, even if it is scaled, the problem is it is not reliable. In the absence of a reliable source, we have no other option but to reduce the safety concerns or whatever they are, the dangers associated with nuclear power, and move towards this until we find a alternative technology. This is the context. Clear? Why do we need nuclear power? I hope that is clear. The second aspect of nuclear power is the science behind it. What are the raw materials used? What is a moderator? All that aspects are beyond the scope of this class, which will be taught in your general science classes. I am expecting that you will revise that. Clear? What is the role of plutonium, uranium, thorium? All this, the basics. What are the 3 stages of our nuclear program? Where do we have these nuclear power plants, their location? All this should be a part of your prelims preparation. If you are making any notes, please leave some space, go back, do that homework and close this issue. All that is fine. Now we understood the need, the practical necessity, why nuclear power is indispensable, the associated current issues, the practical necessities. Why are we left with no other option? What are the technological aspects? So once you are aware of this, what is the problem? Why are we not just taking up this nuclear power issue? The biggest concern is safety. India has a history of poor industrial disaster management. The case to the point being the Bhopal gas tragedy. Who should be held liable in that case? What happened in the Bhopal gas tragedy? Overnight, when the entire city of Bhopal was sleeping nearly 35-40 years ago, a gas leaked and people were killed. Who should be held liable? Is it the operator or the supplier who did not give enough training? How should we deal with that issue? That nightmare has set a very wrong precedent for how we manage our industrial disasters. That's point number 1. And if we look at the post-independent history, one big concern with nuclear power is that it has a dual use. It is a dual use technology. What do I mean by this? What is dual use in this case? It can be used for civilian as well as military technologies. We were coming from a backdrop of the nuclear tests in 1974, where Operation Smiling Buddha was there, and 1998-99 Pokhran test. In both these conditions, India threatened the world order according to US. They were under a assumption that we will be bullied to accept the so-called test ban treaty, where no power except the P5 or the ones who already have that nuclear weapons should not test it. India did not budge. We did not accept it. And we went ahead to test our nuclear weapon in 1999, which clearly explains our philosophy. What is that philosophy? Look at the name of the first test, Operation Smiling Buddha. We are not here to threaten or attack. We are using the name of Buddha, who is considered an exemplary example of, is considered an apostle of peace. He is an example. It's a symbolic example to show that we are not here to threaten anybody's sovereignty. And even in 1998-99, the backdrop is Pakistan has been threatening us. So we have a clear-cut stance. We do not intend to attack any country. We have a doctrine called no first use doctrine. We don't intend to use it at all. So this is the setup. But how did US react? They imposed sanctions. Indian economy was under a lot of pressure. But the same country in 2008, despite opposition from China, where there is a group called Nuclear Supplier Group, which is a group of countries that supply this nuclear raw material to different countries. They were not okay to give nuclear material to India. And the main reason is this group works on consensus. Even if one member is not okay with giving nuclear material, the entire group should accept it and stop. And China was stopping the nuclear raw material supply to us. It is in this context the historic 2008 India-US nuclear deal happened. And this nuclear deal happened despite the opposition from NSG, despite we not signing the CTBT, purely on our democratic credentials. That's a huge diplomatic win. But did things change? Did nuclear power take off? Unfortunately, the world witnessed another disaster a few years later, that is in 2011. In Japan, you've had the Fukushima disaster, where an earthquake has destabilized the most safest nuclear facility. It's considered to be one of the safest nuclear facility in the world, despite factoring in all the earthquakes and the natural disasters that Japan is prone to. It was designed to withstand that, and despite that, there was a problem. People were very scared if something will happen to that reactor. Unfortunately, nothing happened to the core of the reactor, but it was a wake-up call and a very serious concern for the rest of the world, which were trying to increase their nuclear power presence. It is in this context, one of the major player in this sector, France, becomes very important. We were trying to procure seal deals with US, France, Russia, and establish power plants in this country, nuclear power plants in this country. But one thing or the other stopped us. Either it is the lack of a legal clarity or local protests. In both these fronts, India has been suffering. And if India has to see itself as a global player, we have no other option at this point of time but to move towards clear nuclear laws, and opposition should be playing a very important role in this. Why opposition? What are the laws? Let us see. So, whenever there is a contract, you have to understand some concepts. The concept of a liability. What is liability? If something goes wrong, who will take care? If there is a problem with the power plant and some accident happened, we are victims. Who will compensate us? So, this question becomes very important in costing our project. Let's say, for example, you want to take an insurance. Who should pay for that insurance premium? Because this is a recurring cost. You have to pay a premium for insurance every year. Right? Who should take this responsibility? Is it the supplier who gives us raw material, or is it the operator who is running that plant? Okay? This question has been the central dilemma. Our lawmakers in 2010 came out with a law saying that the civil liability for any nuclear damage should be borne by the supplier. And ironically, the present government, the BJP government, in 2007, along with the communists, opposed this law and they pushed for supplier liability because it is unsafe. Now, according to the present government, situations have changed. So, we want to allow an amendment to the 1962 Atomic Act and bring about changes in the present act to allow private participation. This time, opposition, that is the Congress, which came up with this law, is opposing, saying that this is against the sovereignty. The same thing. So politics cannot stop the larger interests of this nation. This country requires this new age frontier technologies. Whether we are talking about the small modular reactors, this is a very, very important concept for your prelims exam in science and technology. You should know what is a small modular reactor going forward. Okay, we will cover it at some point, but now if you are reading, you should know it. You should know how a semiconductor industry is organized. What are the various steps in the value chain of the semiconductor industry? You should know that. You should know all the laws associated with this and the technology behind the nuclear power program. And it is in this context, the entire nuclear power debate is back in news. And you will see time and again over the next 1 year. So when you are preparing on different energy resources, please do not ignore nuclear power, because most materials do not give due importance to this kind of issues, because this is a very old issue. Aspirants do not give the kind of importance to this topic as much as they give it to a topic like, say, green hydrogen or battery technologies, EVs, etc. Clear? Okay. Why India needs a space law? Basically I will sum up. This article will again be covered overall philosophy of regulation. See, the intent of this article is to showcase the government as a facilitator of a new industry that is taking its birth. Okay? So any new industry should be looked at with optimism but not skepticism. This is the approach of governance and legislation which I want you to, this is my own interpretation. In new sectors, whether it is blue economy, space, AI, fintech, or any frontier technology like quantum computing, nanotechnology, biotechnology, do not look at a private researcher and a private body with skepticism. The principle that you should abide by is that if they are creating monopolies and abusing our citizens and misusing the data, that is where the state intervenes. Until then, state should facilitate and not harass entrepreneurs. This is my approach towards any issue that any evolving industry should be approached with. And this approach is called the regulatory sandbox approach. Please note this keyword, regulatory sandbox approach. Now, I don't have to explain basics of this this outer space treaty of 1967, etc., because it is in detail explained here. But the overall change that you need to observe is what is the situation in 1967 and what is the situation now. So everybody, when they're approaching a science and technology issue, they'll ask, what is going to change? So I am a person who would ask the other way around, what is not going to change? See, everybody is interested in knowing how the world is going to evolve and take steps in that direction. Let's say, for example, you want to know how AI is going to evolve. Why don't we take a step back and ask, let AI come, what is not going to change? Can you tell what is not going to change? Let's say this is a very famous interview. This is not something that I am coming up with. It's an insight that I picked up from Jeff Bezos. He was talking about the growth of Amazon, and I'm literally blatantly copying that thought and applying it here. So when somebody asked him the secret formula for success, he told the exact same thing. Instead of worrying about what is going to change, let us always stick to the basics and ask what is not going to change. Even in the future, will you have your customer coming back and saying, I want a costlier product, don't offer it cheap. I want a product that will reach, maybe even after 1 week it's okay. I don't want faster delivery. Do you think any customer will say that? No, right? What is not going to change? They want cheap goods, they want quality goods, they want it quick. So these principles will not change. Correct? No matter how much the technology evolves, some basics will not change because they are linked to how humans think. Similarly, in approach to governance and lawmaking, instead of looking at the players with skepticism, let us always stick to some basic rules. What is the purpose of governance? 1, to facilitate growth. 2, prevent abuse. These 2 principles should be incorporated. Everything else should be tried and tested. There is no hard and fast rule that we should stick to this old principles only. And if you have that approach in legislation, you're most likely to succeed. And it is in this context you have to read this in space. The norms, guidelines and the procedures for Indian space policy. Please read this Indian space policy and the explanation behind this. So whenever you are reading issues like this, it's fine if you are taking some inspiration from other countries' policies also. Incorporate the best practices of different countries. Clear? Okay. See, what are machine readable electoral rolls? In simple word, they want a PDF where we can search your electoral roll. That's it. Don't try to, complicate it. This is a very important topic for your prelims exam. Charge coupled devices. What are they? I am not asking you to remember the exact science behind it, how it will happen, etc. But I'll tell you the context of this discovery and innovation. Way back in 60s and 70s, this was discovered, but they won a Nobel Prize in physics somewhere around 2009 or 10, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, 9. Okay. So what is this CCD? What exactly does it does? So it's a device. I will give it through an analogy. Today we are looking at a digital world. Let's say for example this very board. If I'm drawing something here, this is basically a pixel on the screen which is appearing to you. How is it appearing? There is a CCD behind that, not cafe coffee day, charge coupled devices. So how does it exactly work? This is the question. Any non-science students will find, even science students, let's not pretend like we are scientists. So let's use some analogy to make it simpler for us. How many of you watched this show Game of Thrones? Or let's say, there is a very dark place, for example. Imagine this as a gate, okay? And you have night watchman here. Okay, when light, they're holding some notebook and they're noting down whenever there is a torchlight, someone is putting some torchlight on this dark area. Every time a photon hits them, they will take a note. Okay, here. So all these night watchmen will note all these data pointers and store it in their notebooks. At the end of the day, all of these people, this guy will give the notebook to this person, 2 notebooks to this person, and like this, the supervisor will get a collection of notebooks with the readings. Okay. depending on the readings, the patterns, the supervisor will analyze and reconstruct an image. And this is how digital images were born for the first time, which revolutionized the entire industry. Prior to this, we were using films. But because of this coupled charge devices, we are seeing a revolution in how optical images are appearing. This single innovation has repercussions not just for our digital panels and boards and cell phones, laptops, but there are multiple other interventions. Let's say, for example, in medical technology, you have this imaging, CT scans, ultrasound. All of this, not exactly ultrasound in terms of the sound, but the result that you get is again appearing on our digital screens because of this. So there is a possibility that UPSC can pick up this question like a bouncer. Just like in 2021, there was this question on blue LED, 21 or 22. Because it is linked to our digital India and digital revolution. This is even relevant for our semiconductor industry. And because of this, this charge coupled devices are important. So this is a very out of the box question if you expect this in our paper. Usually you won't pay attention to this kind of issues. But your ability to at least remember this through the story will help you take an educated guess in prelims, or maybe generate a very generic answer. At least link it to the industry for which it is relevant. You will be able to produce some decent answer, or maybe get one question right in the prelims, which is a huge deal. Okay, that brings us to the end of the discussion today. So the online folks, the class ends here. For the offline students, you can